Okay, so guys, let me just show you the last part of your outline. So just a couple of things. Outlines are going to be due Thursday, 2:20. So what'll happen is you'll have today and tomorrow in class to kind of work on your outlines. Thursday's mini lesson at the start, I'm going to show you how to write the first kind of opening paragraphs of your research paper. Okay, I just want to show you a couple of things here, then kind of let you go, because I think you're still on the day 2 where you're adding in your New York rocks. You're looking at the sediments reading, and you're figuring out how the rocks you see in New York connect to the sets of block diagrams where the tropical sea was changing over time. So the hardest part about the paper, and the part that I'm going to leave to you guys to figure out, is how do these two pictures kind of connect to each other. So you have a series of events that's happening in those block diagrams. How are those events in here, okay, at this point in time in the Appalachian Basin? How did those lead to the formation of all these New York rocks that you see in here? So if you need to rewatch that video, this is the part of where I'm deliberately not going to kind of give you specifics, because it's your job to figure out, you know, what event formed the Schenectady beds, what event formed the limestone of the cave, when did that happen? Okay, so you're gonna have to piece together, make some inferences there. The last part of your outline, and I'll put this slide up on Classroom for you guys. So this is kind of where what your outline is starting to look like now. The stuff in red is the stuff you've added in over time. So you have the TIA events, okay, the Taconic Mountain building. You've got the evidence in the Berkshires. You kind of have this section where you guys should all be in today, where you're talking about the changing conditions in the Appalachian Basin Sea. So that's kind of the diagrams I just showed you. So you guys are all kind of in kind of this general area, trying to connect the New York rocks to it. Okay, some of this stuff is going to be within this event too. Okay, so it's kind of all this stuff is kind of meshed together. Okay, none of your New York rocks are going to be anywhere from Pangea down here. Okay, so there was no tropical. The basin essentially lifted up when Pangea attached. Okay, so your New York rocks have to be somewhere before Pangea. Okay, the last steps that you do is you have to take where it says present day geology, that's the last section, okay? And you're probably going to be working on this later in class tomorrow and Thursday, and you're going to discuss in a couple of paragraphs at the end of your paper kind of what is the present day geology. So the rivers you see in terms of their age, their features, the weathering and erosion examples you saw at JBT Park in the cave, that is like a current geology kind of closing. And that you'll have to use your field guide to kind of extract that information. So your closing is kind of like the geology you see today in kind of New York area, and the weathering and erosion that's happening. So that's how you're going to close your almost like your conclusion type paragraph goes there. Your field guide you can also use when you're talking about the New York rocks and when you're talking about the Connecticut River Valley. So what you'll do on once you finish this middle section is you're going to open up your field guide, and when you talk about those layers of rocks using the sediments reading, you're going to take your noticings and you're going to put them in with those rocks. So for instance, when you have the Connecticut River Valley here, and you talk about the pillow lavas, the Holyoke basalts, as your evidence, you can add in your noticings. So add in your noticing. I noticed the Holyoke basalts were, this color. They had this texture. Okay, when you do the tilted rock, what they call the Longmeadow Formation, the rocks of the Rift Valley, incorporate your noticings in there. So one of the pieces to the rubric is that you've actually incorporated in your paper your information you were able to gather while you're at those sites. Okay, so that last step is kind of integrating your field guide into the appropriate parts. Another example, when you talk about the Berkshires as evidence of TIA colliding, you can take your field guide notes and say, after you talk about the evidence of the Berkshires, and say, I noticed when I drove through the Berkshires that these rocks were very messy. They were tilted, they were crumpled, they were metamorphic. So you're taking your noticings and putting them where they fit into this section here. So all those New York rocks we saw on the trip, you can kind of take in your noticings, the Berkshires you saw, open up your field guide, add that in. That stuff will come at the very end, is you incorporating your kind of, what your senses of what you saw into your paper. Kate, what's up?
So, are we using our field guide notes as like evidence for some of them?
It's adds into your evidence. You're taking evidence from the readings, and then you're using your field guide to further support that information you get from the reading. Is that clearer? So you take the readings, and the readings give you information about those rocks, the conditions they formed in. Okay, and your noticings are additional support for the information you get from those readings. Again, this is the hardest part, this changing conditions in the Appalachian Basin, because it's tricky to figure out why are there multiple layers of rock in New York that came from the sea, and why is it not just one giant layer of limestone or sandstone, okay? That's the accelerated part that you guys have to kind of figure out what's happening, okay? Taylor, you had a question?
Yes.
All right, any other questions? So again, today kind of really focus on this, make sure you kind of nail this part here. This is the hardest part. It's also the part that is graded the most as well in the rubric, so just make sure you're kind of really thinking this through and not just kind of, just pulling random stuff out of those readings. That's the big part, okay?